Hello, I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's podcast network. Joining me today is Matt Davis, who is Country Director of Open Table Canada. Thanks, Matt, for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Mario. It's always a pleasure.
All right, let's talk about some data that you guys folks put together here fairly recently about the restaurant industry in the country. Where is it at right now? What is that data showing you about where the restaurant industry is these days?
Yeah, it's actually really interesting. And our data is showing us that Canadians have a very hearty appetite for dining out, which is great because we're still during a really crucial period in restaurant recovery here in Canada. Canadian restaurants experienced a super busy summer that was buoyed by strong diner demand. And thankfully, that has continued into the fall. According to our data, the number of seated diners from online, walk-in, and phone reservations at our restaurants from July 1st to October 25th of 22 was up 21% on average compared to the same period in 2019, which is the last full year of normal dining behavior that we have. So Canadians are excited to still continue to dine out, and that's really great for restaurants.
And I guess it's great for them as they head into a very busy time of the year with all festivities over Christmas and Christmas parties and bashes and the like, right?
Yeah, exactly. So an active summer really marked a sort of a return to business as usual. But the fall and the upcoming festive season remain a critical period of recovery for the industry. They are really a critical period in every year of the restaurant industry. Against this backdrop, we're observing some interesting trends and shifts in Canadian dining habits. Okay. Mostly that Canadians continue to spend and they've been indulging a bit when dining out. So some of our data reveals a 38% increase in seated diners at high price point restaurants. So these are restaurants that self-report to us that they have a $65 or more per person on average check. And we've seen that 38% increase between July 1 and September 19th of 2022. That's comparing it to the same period last year. So Canadians, despite rising prices and the media buzz about inflation, they're still dining out and they're indulging when they're doing it. We're also hearing from our diners that 57% of them are willing to pay more when they're dining out, knowing that food costs have increased.
That's interesting, right? Any thoughts on the why behind that? As you said, everywhere you turn, the prices of food are going up, prices at restaurants are going up, but and Canadians are, according to the survey, willing to pay more. Why? So you would think they would be the opposite. I'm going to sit home and put on the microwave and boom, I'll eat at home.
Yeah, and you're right. I think everyone's just overdoing that, right? We did it for so long during the pandemic, and now people are they're ready to enjoy the fall and the winter and the holiday season, come what may. And so I think we had those savings held up through the period of the pandemic, and we're going to have a holiday season whether we like it or not. Certainly that's my approach to things. But I also think that Canadians have internalized the industry's support restaurants messaging that we were advocating for throughout the pandemic. They recognize that they need to help local restaurants recover and thrive. Yeah. We're also seeing that in really some generous tipping practices that are happening. 43% of Canadian diners plan to leave a bigger tip to show support for their hard work during tough financial times. And 71% of Canadian diners are leaving at least a 15% tip, while another 14% are leaving greater than a 20% tip. So in my eyes, all of this data and what we're seeing is saying to me that, one, Canadians are still eager to go and take to revenge dine post-pandemic, enjoy themselves. And they really know that the restaurants and our industry need it to get through these critical periods of recovery.
Mm-hmm. What is your data showing you about, excuse me, about reservations and how people are making reservations on different platforms these days?
So the data is continuing to tell the same story that we've seen throughout the pandemic, which is that online reservations continue to boom. And really the consumer reliance on reservation platforms like OpenTable have increased through the pandemic and are continuing to transform behavior of consumers and restaurant operations. So comparing the first half of this year to the same period in 2019, reservations booked 8 to 14 days prior to the dining date rose 50%. And so that's people booking online and planning to go out. Really, Canadians have shown great enthusiasm for dining out, and the exuberant behavior we're seeing is really persisting into these cooler months. And so the online piece is really part of that. As the demand is high, people need to are willing and eager to make sure they are confirming a reservation. They have less time to do so over the phone. They're more technology savvy, I guess, and so they're using online tools to make those reservations.
And let's put it, also it's a great tool for the restaurants themselves, right? And the fact that it doesn't take a person away from other duties in the restaurant, with the phone constantly ringing, right, to make reservations.
Yeah, exactly. The trends that we're seeing in the industry, and I'm sure many have heard about across industries, is there's still labor challenges. We don't have enough people in restaurants to help work restaurants, and so technology can help fill that gap to provide a more seamless diner experience, to connect the diner with the restaurant in advance of the reservation, and really just fill some gaps to make service in the restaurant more efficient and seamless, really, whilst driving that demand into the restaurant itself.
All right, super. And Matt, anything else from that data that struck you as interesting?
I think just that exuberance that I mentioned, I think I'm excited to see it still there. I'm a little surprised as well. I think, to your point, Mario, sorry, we've been seeing a lot of news, a lot of scary news and forecasts about the economy.
Yeah.
And certainly that's in the front of everyone's mind. It's definitely causing challenges for restaurants in terms of supply, food costs, etc. But the great story is that we're still seeing the demand persist and diners eager to get out and support restaurants. So I think the thing I want to always highlight is the importance of showing up for restaurants. No-shows continue to be a big problem. And so our message, and the message I personally always want to share and advocate, is that if you can't make a reservation, make sure you call and let the restaurant know so they can release that availability back to another diner who's eager to go and dine out.
All right, super. Thanks, Matt, for joining us today.
Thank you, Mario. It's always a pleasure. Appreciate it.
All right, that was Matt Davis, OpenTable Canada's country director. I'm Mario Toneguzzi, taking care of business on Canada's Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us today.